Hey guys, Random Prepper 2K here. Today I'm going to go through some issues on selecting a piece of property that you can use for either recreation, camping, potential bug out location, and some considerations and how to prepare it so that when or if you ever need to relocate to that property, you've got some stuff set up for you so you can survive, basically. So what we're going to look at first, this particular location, it's very remote, off the grid. There's nothing up here but this 4x4 trail. We got some beautiful mountains around us, lots of elk and deer up in those mountains would provide you with some food. And one of the first things you're going to want to do when you've selected a piece of land, now this particular piece of property that I purchased about 10 to 15 years ago was sold as raw land. There was no way to get into the property. So I had to, first thing I did is I built this little road, this little dirt road, put up a gate to try and I will emphasize that, try to keep people out from accessing the road that goes back into where my improvised camp is, and fire ring and table and camping spot. Basically it's an easy spot where you can set up camp in a hurry if you've already pre-staged some of the items that you might need in advance. So there's nobody out here. So what we're going to do is kind of do a walk around the property. You can see there's plenty of opportunities for firewood. These particular trees, some of them are over 150 years old. It's very dry up here. So the first thing that you're going to want to consider when you're selecting property for either recreation or potential bug out location is water. You can make up for the fact that you don't maybe have electricity. There's easy options for that, solar being the primary one. You can generate your own power, so I wouldn't let the fact that the land that you're looking at, if it doesn't have electricity on the site, there's pros and cons to that. If you want to be off the grid, this is off the grid. And the benefits are, hey, you're not tied to power. Nobody knows where you're at. There's no power bill. There's no reliance on power because you never had it to begin with. So you're going to want to invest in some solar capability if you're in an environment like this. Your number one issue when selecting land, in my opinion, location is everything, of course, but only second to that would be availability of water. And up here there is no water, really. You have to truck it in yourself. You have to carry it in yourself. What you also need to consider if you buy land, arid land like this that doesn't have easy access to water, is you need the ability to store the runoff that you get in the spring from the snow. That mountain right there is 14,000 plus feet, and there's another one over there that's also 14,000 feet. Those mountains are covered with multiple feet. We're talking 20-30 feet of snow throughout the entire winter season, and when that runs off, it all comes down here. There's seasonal water on this property. So for a survival bug out scenario, or even recreation, you're going to want a way to capture that water. You want a way to capture that water when it comes down. Because in the summer months, like here we are in early September, Labor Day weekend, you are going to find that there's not a lot of water up here. You're going to see a lot of cactus, a lot of pinon trees, and it's really a high desert environment. That valley down there, it's all agricultural. That's how they support the economy in this area, but they have to dig wells, deep wells, and down on the valley floor you can do that. Up here it's a lot harder to dig wells because you don't know how deep you have to go. The assumption is that you're going to have to go at least as deep as they are down there in the valley, plus add on the elevation difference between here and there and add that on to your well. It can be a really expensive well. We're talking $25,000 to drill a hole, and if there's water in it, great, but if there's not, you're out 25 grand. You can pick up property like this for under $10,000. It's 5 acres of land. Can you survive on land like this? Well, yes, you certainly can. But the best way to ensure that you could survive on land like this is to plan in advance. What are you going to need? Obviously, you're going to need water, access to water, and water storage. So one of the first things you do with unimproved land like this to make it suitable for a bug out location is to secure your water supply. And that's something I'm still working on, unfortunately, because it's difficult. Another consideration when you buy land like this that's out in the middle of nowhere is theft. Unless you're going to be up here every weekend or every other weekend, people are going to come up here and they're going to, want to see what you've been doing. They're going to hear that you've been up here. They're going to know that you've been up here. And if you attempt to store anything of value up here, they're gonna freaking steal it from you. Be advised, if you buy land out in an area similar to this one, don't make it obvious at all that you have anything of value at all on your property. Because when you finally come up here and you need it, you make the assumption, hey, when I get there, I've got this stuff. You can't make that assumption because some douchebag or multiple douchebags is going to think that they deserve that stuff more than you, and they're going to steal it from you. I've had everything you can imagine ripped off from me on this property. I've stashed propane tanks, gone. Picnic table, gone. Tools like heavy duty pry bars, because there's big rocks everywhere that you want to excavate if you're going to do any real work on the land, gone. Hummingbird feeder, like a $6 plastic hummingbird feeder, they even stole that. So take it from me, if you leave anything of value whatsoever on your land exposed, do not plan on it being there when you get back. So what do? Well, obviously you could bury a stash of water, food, ammunition, maybe a cheap firearm that you don't really care about, Obviously you want to pick a firearm that's reliable. If you have a Curio and Relics FFL license, you can pick up a couple pistols for pretty cheap. 150 to 250 bucks will get you a 9mm that you could use for protection against two-legged critters, and you could probably go hunting with it as well. Like the Ruger 1022 rifle doesn't cost a whole lot. You could pick up one of those, bury it up here with, a couple thousand rounds of ammo. Obviously 22 ammo, even today, is still fairly cheap. You can stock it deep and bury it if you wanted to do so. So regardless of where your main house is, you come out to a location like this, how are you going to get out here? This might be 100 miles from your house, might be 250 miles from your house. Are you going to have access to an SUV or a trailer to haul all your crap out here? How are you going to get out of the city? These are all things that require you to give some serious thought to pre-prepping some things on your bug out location. So can you survive out here? Yeah, absolutely. Are the winters harsh? Absolutely. It gets to 30 below zero out here in the winter. And there's no bullshit when I say that. 30 degrees below zero, which is almost impossible to survive in unless you have a structure or the ability to build an improvised structure. Do you build that in advance and let some vandal or somebody that wants to rip you off steal the windows out of your shelter? Well, in an environment like this, my suggestion is use what's here. Obviously, we have a lot of rocks. So what I would suggest in an environment like this one is you use the natural resources that are available to you. In this case, it's rocks. You build stone walls. You can dig down into the ground. It's difficult. It's very difficult, especially if you hit a tiny little rock and you're like, oh, I can pry this out. And that tiny little rock is like the tip of the iceberg, and it ends up being a Volkswagen bus at the bottom of it as far as mass. And you're gonna have to dig that out. There's some roads out here that are covered with car parts. People that have broken down, they go too fast, they get one of these rocks up in their oil pan, and their vehicle dies up here. And I don't care if you have AAA or the best insurance in the world, nobody is going to tow you out from this terrain unless you pay a small fortune to make it happen. So you need a reliable 4x4 to get into land like this with good tires. Make sure your tires have good tread on them. These are all things that you can do today that will get you in a position to have a plan B should things head south where you live. A few people live up here year round, and I've met several of them. They raise chickens, goats, they have a domestic well, or they truck in their water, and they make it work. It's a hard existence, very hard. I think people underestimate how hard it really is. You want land that has access to wood, water, and hunting opportunities. Ideally, you'd have water running through your property year round. But that's expensive property. How much money do you have to burn? If you've only got $7,000 to $10,000 that you can spend on land like this is the kind of land you're going to get. You're going to have a beautiful view. You're going to have access to everything in those mountains. And those mountains go back 100 miles. Some of the best elk herds in the state are back in there. So, yeah, what if you shoot an elk? How are you going to preserve 400 pounds of meat? This is all stuff that you need to consider. So going on to the property, this road right here, I guess you could call it a road, didn't exist before I bought the land. Had to build this. It's a lot of work to move all the rocks. It took years. Could have paid someone to do it, but then you pay someone to do that work for you, and you've always got that question in the back of your mind that there's people, you don't know who they've talked about or who they've talked to about what you're doing, that they know what you've done. So when you outsource the labor, to a certain extent, you're outsourcing your bug out locations details to anybody. Anybody that guy talks to that dug out your road and then built your road is going to know, hey, there's some stuff up there. Next thing you know, your stuff is getting ripped off. It's pretty unbelievable. You can spend an entire weekend building a solid national parks quality picnic table up here, and you'll come up here and you'll find that somebody has removed it. I had it chained to a tree with a pretty heavy duty padlock and chain, and all that was left when I came up here were the broken links that somebody had left behind when they cut that chain apart and removed the picnic table. How many dudes did it take for that? One guy? Did he have a lot of time, or was it 3 guys? How did they get in here? The road is blocked off. Maybe they came in on foot. I don't know. Theft is a big issue.